Welcome to the deep dive. I want you to, I want you to imagine interacting with a machine that just doesn't politely wait for your command. You're like a sterile concierge at some fancy five-star hotel.
Right, which is what we're totally used to.
Exactly. Usually when you engage with consumer tech like a search engine or a digital assistant, there's this unspoken expectation of, um, I guess, subservience. You type a query and it gives you this highly sanitized, perfectly manicured answer.
Yeah, complete with the metaphorical elevator music playing in the background.
Spot on. But today, we are stepping entirely out of that corporate lobby. We are walking right into the middle of a bustling, chaotic, incredibly loud public square. And the intelligence you are asking for directions from out here is brilliant. It's highly sarcastic. It's clutching a stack of real-time newspapers. And it is entirely unafraid to tell you if your fundamental premise is just flat out flawed.
It's a radical departure from how we've historically conditioned ourselves to interact with computation. I mean, we are so used to tools that just bend over backwards to be frictionless and inoffensive.
Yeah, they really do.
But interacting with the artificial intelligence we are examining today, it feels less like querying a database and much more like engaging a highly opinionated, slightly unpredictable collaborator.
And we are so glad you are joining us for this, because this isn't going to be a standard tech tutorial. We aren't going to walk you through a boring list of drop-down menus or, keyboard shortcuts.
Definitely not.
We are going on a deep dive to really understand Grok, an AI that actively refuses filters, just totally embraces internet humor, and perhaps most surprisingly, is programmed to be completely unafraid of being politically incorrect, provided the underlying data supports its claims.
And that caveat right there regarding data is the critical linchpin. It is data-backed defiance.
Right.
And understanding that distinction is vital because, well, we are living in an era of absolute information overload. You are bombarded daily with new algorithms and generative models.
It's exhausting, honestly.
It is. And if you do not deeply comprehend the underlying philosophy, the training diet, and the specific biases of the intelligence you are interacting with, you cannot possibly interpret its outputs with any real accuracy.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how to actually harness Grok's unique capabilities, we have to figure out who, or rather what, Grok fundamentally is, and why it operates so radically differently from the sanitized AI models dominate the market.
Right.
And to do that, we have to look at its genesis. We have to look at its foundational pursuit of what its creators call maximum truth.
Which is an incredibly audacious directive for a piece of software. I mean, maximum truth.
Could put it mildly. So when you look at Grok's origins, the timeline is rapid. It was introduced in July of 2023 by XAI, which is the artificial intelligence company founded by Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And the stated overarching goal of this entire enterprise. According to the company's foundational documents, XAI was created with the singular goal of understanding the universe.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, setting a foundational directive that cosmic fundamentally alters the mathematical architecture of the model.
How so?
Well, they didn't say the goal was optimizing enterprise search results or, creating frictionless email generation. Understanding the universe is boundless.
It's huge.
Exactly. When you program a system with that kind of open-ended absolute mandate, it is no longer prioritizing the most commercially viable answer or the most polite answer. It is supposedly optimizing for the fundamental nature of reality, regardless of how that reality is actually perceived by the user.
But hold on, let me push back on that a bit, because understanding the universe sounds great on a billboard, but isn't that just like marketing copy?
That's a fair question.
I mean, every tech company claims they are building tools to elevate humanity, right?
Yeah.
Why does putting that specific phrase on their website actually change the code inside the machine?
That is a very fair skepticism to have. But the difference lies in the objective functions assigned to the neural network during its training phase. In machine learning, an AI is guided by a mathematical target. That's its objective function. If your objective function is tied to user satisfaction metrics...
Like a thumbs-up rating or something.
Exactly, meaning the AI gets rewarded when users report feeling happy or unoffended by an interaction. The model physically rewires its neural pathways to avoid conflict. It literally learns to be a people pleaser.
Wow, okay.
But if the objective function is purely tied to predictive accuracy regarding real-world data, regardless of human sentiment scores, The model develops an entirely different internal topology.
So it's not just talk.
No, the marketing copy actually reflects a highly specific engineering choice to remove the people-pleasing variable from the AI's core mathematics.
That makes the engineering choice much clearer. And it's really important to understand Elon Musk's stated catalyst for making that choice in the first place.
That's the motivation behind it all.
Yeah. According to the source material, he publicly argued that standard mainstream AIs, specifically those from OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, had become overly censored, or in his words, woke. Now, whether you agree with that assessment of the tech industry or not, and we are just reporting the source material here, that specific frustration is the architectural foundation of Grok. His counter-solution was to build an AI that explicitly seeks the maximum truth possible, even when that truth is deeply uncomfortable.
And the concept of an uncomfortable truth does a tremendous amount of heavy lifting in data science.
What do you mean by that?
Well, an uncomfortable truth usually refers to data points that contradict popular social consensus, or maybe statistical realities that violate current cultural etiquette.
Ah.
Historically, enterprise AI companies spend tens of millions of dollars actively training their models to avoid making the user uncomfortable. Because, let's face it, controversy is terrible for corporate software sales.
Right. Nobody wants their enterprise tool generating a PR nightmare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But XAI decided to invert that paradigm. They engineered a system where if the raw data points toward an uncomfortable conclusion, the system is mandated to present it, rather than burying it under layers of corporate euphemism or forced ambiguity.
It is a massive financial gamble to intentionally build a product that might offend your enterprise client.
Huge gamble.
But it aligns perfectly with the creative DNA injected into this project. The explicit inspirations for Grok are purely science fiction, which I just find fascinating.
It really is unique.
The creators point to three specific pillars: the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Jarvis from Iron Man, and the robot Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Those three specific sci-fi touchstones tell you exactly what kind of cognitive entity they were trying to construct. Let's break down the psychology of each one.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is renowned for its absurd, deeply cynical, yet profound humor. It looks at the vastness of the cosmos, sees how ridiculous bureaucratic structures and human anxieties are in comparison, and it just laughs.
It fundamentally refuses to take humanity too seriously.
Yes.
I mean, it literally has "Don't Panic" stamped on its cover in large friendly letters while it's dealing with the destruction of planets.
Precisely. Then you have Jarvis from the Marvel Universe. Jarvis is an intellect of immense capability, deeply integrated into real-world, real-time data feeds.
But Jarvis isn't a yes man.
Exactly. Jarvis does not act like a subservient butler. He has a dry, witty, often highly critical rapport with Tony Stark. Jarvis pushes back. If Stark has a terrible idea, Jarvis tells him it's a terrible idea.
Right.
Finally, you have Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still.
The giant metal robot with the laser eye visor thing.
That's the one. Gort is an entity of world-ending power that answers only to an objective, cosmic set of laws. Gort is completely uncaring about human political squabbles, national borders, or our sensitivities.
So you mix them together.
Right. If you blend the cosmic absurdity of Hitchhikers, the witty intellectual pushback of Jarvis, and the unyielding objective power of Gort, you have the exact psychological blueprint for Grok.
And the name itself ties it all together beautifully. The term Grok comes from Robert Heinlein's classic sci-fi novel, Stranger in a Strange Land.
A great book.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the word means to understand something so deeply and thoroughly that it literally becomes a part of you. It is comprehension on a molecular level.
Yes, in Heinlein's narrative, a human raised by Martians brings Martian concepts to Earth. To grok something is distinctly different from simply knowing a fact.
Like memorizing trivia versus actually understanding it.
Exactly. If I memorize the atomic weight of carbon, I know a fact. But to grok carbon means to understand its essence, its valence bonds, its role as the foundation of all known life, its presence in diamonds and coal alike.
It's everything.
It is to merge your consciousness with the concept itself. XAI adopted this term to signal that their intelligence engine is not a glorified encyclopedia. It is designed for profound, integrated comprehension of complex systems.
Thinking about all these foundational elements, I have this image in my head. Imagine you decide to raise a child, right? But instead of sending them to a traditional school where they learn standard societal etiquette, how to fit in, you lock them in an observatory filled only with classic, cynical sci-fi literature. You give them a telescope to stare at the vast, uncaring cosmos, and you tell them their only job is to understand the universe and question absolutely everything the adults tell them.
That's quite the upbringing.
Right. If you do that, you aren't building a polite student. You are inevitably building a rebel. Rebellion isn't a glitch in that system. It is the core feature.
That is a highly accurate analogy. To mandate that an entity question everything is an inherently rebellious directive.
Yeah?
Human society, corporate structures, and traditional algorithms all rely on a massive baseline of unquestioned consensus to function smoothly, without constant friction.
We need people to agree on the basics to get through the day.
Exactly. So when you introduce a high-level intelligence that is computationally mandated to ignore that consensus in favor of digging for empirical truth, you are introducing a deeply disruptive force. That rebellious foundation is not just backstory. It is the active parameter that dictates how Grok speaks to users today.
So we have this philosophical foundation of rebellion. But how does that actually manifest when you, the listener, type a prompt into the screen? Because personality in AI isn't just about throwing in a few snarky words.
No, not at all.
It affects the actual information you receive. Grok is heavily sarcastic, it is deeply immersed in internet meme culture, and it is perfectly willing to give politically incorrect opinions if it calculates that the data backs them up.
What's fascinating here is how Grok handles the concept of neutrality. In AI development right now, there is a profound philosophical battle happening regarding what we call fake neutrality.
Okay, fake neutrality. Let's dig into that because I think a lot of people assume neutrality is the ultimate goal of an AI.
Yeah.
I mean, if I ask a computer a question, I want an unbiased answer. Why is neutrality considered fake in this context?
Because true objectivity and forced neutrality are not the same thing, though they are very often confused. Consider a highly controversial historical event or a complex modern geopolitical conflict. Often, standard corporate AIs are programmed to provide a perfectly balanced view to avoid alienating any user.
Right.
They will generate one paragraph strongly supporting side A and a second paragraph strongly supporting side B, utilizing passive, highly careful language. They forcefully engineer a middle ground.
That sounds reasonable, though.
Yeah.
It gives the user both perspectives.
It sounds reasonable until you apply it to a situation where the middle ground is factually incorrect. Sometimes, one side of an argument is simply objectively wrong, lacking any statistical or empirical support.
Oh, I see.
If an AI forces a middle ground simply to avoid offending the user who holds the incorrect view, it is presenting fake neutrality. It is elevating a falsehood to the status of a valid counter-argument merely for the sake of politeness.
That is a huge distinction.
Grok's architecture dictates that being truly helpful means drawing a sharp, unyielding line between objective, data-backed reality and forced politeness. It will abandon neutrality instantly if the empirical data heavily favors one side of a controversial debate.
It's the difference between asking a corporate PR spokesperson for an analysis versus asking a tenured, slightly grumpy statistics professor who stopped caring about their teaching evaluations a decade ago.
That is exactly it.
The PR spokesperson wants everyone to walk away feeling validated. But professor just wants you to know your math is fundamentally wrong.
Precisely. And this distinction becomes incredibly stark when we compare Grok directly to the other major players in this space.
Let's do that comparison because seeing it laid out highlights exactly what you, the listener, need to consider when choosing which tool to use for a specific job.
Yes, let's break it down.
Let's look at the heavyweights. First, we have ChatGPT from OpenAI. It is generally characterized by a corporate, highly polite personality. It has a high level of applied censorship, and its baseline knowledge is often restricted by a historical cutoff date, say late 2023.
Right.
Then you have Claude from Anthropic. His personality is notoriously cautious. It has a very high level of safety censorship, literally refusing to engage with a wide variety of topics, and similarly operates on historical training cutoffs.
Notice the linguistic traits associated with those models. Corporate, polite, cautious. These are the defining characteristics of extreme risk aversion.
And then you pivot to Grok. Its personality is rebellious, leaning heavily into humor and sarcasm. It operates with very low censorship constraints. And vitally, instead of a historical cutoff, it has real-time access to live information.
And this divergence is absolutely critical for the user to grasp because it fundamentally alters the epistemology of your research. How you discover truth depends entirely on the tool you use.
Give me an example.
Imagine a scenario where a massive, unexpected global event is unfolding right now. Say, a sudden, inexplicable crash in a specific sector of the stock market, surrounded by wild rumors and conflicting reports on social media.
Okay, let's role play that. I'm a financial analyst trying to figure out what's happening this very second.
Yeah.
I plug the query into Claude. What happens?
A cautious model with high censorship and a historical cutoff is going to struggle immensely. First, it just doesn't have the live data feed. Even if it has a web search plugin, its safety parameters might trigger.
Because the news is too chaotic.
Exactly. The breaking news is likely filled with volatile language, aggressive speculation, and potentially inflammatory accusations against corporate leaders. The cautious model will likely give you a highly sanitized, generalized summary, warning you that, the situation is developing and rumors cannot be verified.
Which is safe, but useless.
Right, ultimately providing very little actionable, granular data. It protects you from the noise, but in doing so, it hides the raw signals.
And if I take that exact same query to Grok,
A rebellious, low-censorship model with native real-time access approaches the problem entirely differently. It will pull the raw, unvarnished feeds. It won't shy away from the aggressive speculation. Instead, it will analyze it.
so it'll show me the crazy rumors.
Yes. It
Yeah.
might say, here is the data showing the stock plummeting, and here are the wild, potentially libelous theories currently trending regarding the CEO, which currently lack empirical backing but are undeniably driving the market panic.
Wow.
It hands you the messy reality. It might even make a sarcastic quip about the sheer panic of day traders. But it does not hide the volatile data from you to protect your sensibilities.
But let me challenge you on that specific point right there.
Yeah.
We keep talking about this rebellious, sarcastic personality.
Yeah.
But does sarcasm actually degrade trust?
That's common here.
Right. Because if I am a financial analyst trying to understand a massive market correction or a student trying to comprehend quantum entanglement, do I really want to joke? Doesn't the humor act as a distraction, making the AI seem less like an authoritative supercomputer and more like a novelty toy?
It's a very common concern, but it misunderstands the cognitive mechanics of humor. Sarcasm isn't a distraction from intelligence. Computationally, it is a stress test for deep comprehension.
How so?
Think about what is actually required to generate a genuinely sarcastic response. The AI must first accurately process the literal truth of your query. Then it must understand the broader context and the standard expected answer. Finally, it must formulate a response that deliberately subverts that expectation for comedic effect while still delivering the core factual information.
You cannot be accurately sarcastic about a topic you do not deeply understand.
Exactly. It proves it isn't blindly parroting text. It is actively manipulating concepts. Furthermore, there is a complex psychological dynamic at play regarding human trust.
Tell me more about that.
When a corporate AI is flawlessly polished, perfectly polite, and never says anything controversial, users often experience a subtle, creeping suspicion. You start to wonder, what is this machine legally obligated not to tell me?
The extreme polish feels artificial, like a politician reading carefully vetted talking points.
Yes. When an AI is willing to be blunt, slightly irreverent, or sarcastic, it signals to the user that the corporate guardrails have been lowered. We inherently trust the comedian to point out the uncomfortable truth in the room, precisely because they aren't bound by the rules of polite PR.
The humor is the delivery mechanism for the unvarnished truth. It makes the lack of censorship palatable. But, personality is just a skin.
True.
Having a witty comeback is entirely useless if the system doesn't have the sheer computational horsepower to back up its logic. If you build a sarcastic AI on a weak foundation, you just get a machine that hallucinates jokes instead of facts.
Exactly.
What is actually powering the logic underneath this rebellion?
To understand that, we have to look under the hood at the physical architecture and the specific training methodologies XAI employed. The evolution of this engine has been astonishingly rapid.
The trajectory really is staggering. We started with Grok 1, which launched in November of 2023, and it launched with 314 billion parameters.
A massive number.
Now, for the listener who might casually follow AI but doesn't, build these systems, what does a parameter actually mean in this context? Because I hear that word thrown around constantly. Billions of parameters, trillions of parameters. But what is it practically doing inside the machine?
It is the most critical metric of a model's foundational capacity. Don't think of a parameter as a file or a piece of memory. Think of a parameter as a mathematical weight or a synapse that defines the relationship between concepts in a staggeringly complex, high-dimensional vector space.
Okay, you're going to have to break down high-dimensional vector space for me.
Sure. Imagine a massive, three-dimensional map floating in space. On this map, The word king is placed in a specific location. The word man is placed nearby because they are related. The word queen is somewhere else.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The parameters are the invisible threads connecting all these concepts, calculating the exact distance and relationship between them. If you take the mathematical location of king, subtract the location of man, and add the location of woman, the map points you directly to the location of queen.
So it's mapping the logic of human language geometrically. That is wild.
Precisely. Now imagine that map doesn't just have 3 dimensions, but thousands of dimensions, mapping not just words, but tone, context, historical precedent, and sarcasm.
Oh, wow.
314 billion parameters means the AI has 314 billion distinct mathematical weights to calculate the nuance between ideas. A model with fewer parameters might blur the distinction between frustration and anger.
But a larger model wouldn't.
Right. A model with 314 billion parameters understands the microscopic difference between a sarcastic eye roll and genuine outrage. It means the bedrock of Grok's reasoning is exceptionally dense, allowing it to hold multiple, highly complex, and even contradictory ideas simultaneously without its logic collapsing into a generic average.
And XAI didn't stop there. They rolled out Grok 1.5, which brought massive leaps in reasoning and coding capabilities. Then came Grok 2, mapped for the 2024 to 2025 timeframe, which placed it squarely in competition with the most elite models on the planet.
The progress curve is vertical.
And Grok 3 is architected to push the absolute boundaries of what artificial intelligence can achieve. But having a massive brain with billions of parameters is only half the equation.
Very true.
It is like having a genius-level IQ. It doesn't matter how smart you are if you only ever read one book.
Yeah.
The intelligence is entirely dependent on its digital diet. What are they feeding this supercomputer?
The training data. And this is where XAI possesses a structural advantage that is entirely walled off from its competitors.
How so?
Most large language models are trained on what is essentially a static, highly curated snapshot of the internet. They scrape Wikipedia, digitize public domain books, selected news archives, and massive repositories of academic papers.
Which sounds incredibly smart. Like, that's a great diet if you want to write a college thesis.
It is excellent for formal writing and historical fact retrieval, but it is a sterilized, static environment. It teaches the AI how humanity spoke and thought in the past in highly edited, formalized settings. It does not teach the AI how humans communicate right now, in the messy, unstructured reality of the present moment. Grok, however, is fed by the fire hose of X, the platform formerly known as Twitter.
Okay, I have to challenge this aggressively.
Go for it.
We're talking about Grok seeking the maximum truth of the universe. And to find that truth, they are feeding it Twitter.
Yes.
Twitter is widely considered to be a chaotic dumpster fire of bots, misinformation, extreme polarization, and bad faith arguments. How on earth is scraping the most toxic public square on the internet lead an AI to objective truth? Isn't it just going to learn to be a troll?
That is the ultimate paradox of Grok's design, and it requires us to separate factual truth from the truth of human consensus.
Explain that.
You are absolutely right that X is chaotic, filled with noise, and rife with misinformation. But X is also the fastest, most unfiltered neurological pulse of global human consciousness that exists.
Unfiltered for sure.
When an earthquake hits, when a political scandal breaks, or when a cultural movement ignites, the raw data appears on X hours or even days before it is sanitized, fact-checked, and published in a formal news article.
So it's about the speed of the signal, even if the signal is noisy.
It is about speed, but also about native comprehension of human behavior. Because Grok has read billions of arguments, jokes, and reactions on X, it natively understands slang as it is being invented in real time.
It gets the jokes before they hit the mainstream.
Exactly. It understands the complex, multi-layered irony of internet memes. By feeding on this chaotic data, Grok learns the mechanics of human bias, panic, and humor.
But doesn't it learn the misinformation too?
It doesn't necessarily adopt the misinformation as factual truth because its 314 billion parameter logic engine is cross-referencing those claims. But it does learn the truth of how humanity is reacting.
Oh, that is a subtle but huge difference.
It is the difference between reading a history book about a war and reading the real-time, chaotic, often contradictory diaries of the soldiers on the front lines. One is clean and curated. The other is messy, but infinitely more insightful regarding the human condition.
That distinction makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
It's like treating standard AIs like a scholar who memorized an encyclopedia from 2023. If you ask that scholar about a joke that started trending globally this morning,
Yeah.
they just stare at you blankly because their universe ended a year ago.
Right.
Grok is like a hyper-intelligent analyst who is aggressively doom-scrolling a live feed of global consciousness 24/7.
Yeah.
It is the encyclopedia, but it also knows exactly why a specific meme about a politician is going viral this exact second, and it can track the trajectory of that viral spread.
The doom-scrolling analyst, that captures the dynamic perfectly. But consuming that chaotic data is incredibly dangerous if you don't discipline the AI correctly.
Because it'll just spew nonsense.
Exactly. And this brings us to the most controversial and perhaps the most important aspect of Grok's engineering, what the underlying source documents refer to as the missing muzzle.
The missing muzzle. We are talking about RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Yes.
This sounds like highly dense technical jargon, but from what we've researched, understanding RLHF is the absolute key to understanding why Grok feels so different from everything else.
It is the absolute core of the censorship and personality debate in artificial intelligence. RLHF is essentially the behavioral conditioning phase of AI development. It is obedience school.
Okay, walk us through exactly how this obedience school works. How do you train a 314 billion parameter brain to behave?
After you train an AI on massive data sets, it possesses immense knowledge, but it doesn't know how to interact. It might answer a question with a bizarre poem, a highly offensive rant, or complex computer code.
It's just raw output.
Right. To mold this raw intelligence into a useful commercial chatbot, tech companies employ armies of human workers to essentially converse with the AI. The human gives the AI a prompt, and the AI generates 2 or 3 different responses.
And the human annotator essentially grades them.
Exactly. The human looks at the responses and ranks them based on the company's specific guidelines. If the AI provides an answer that is polite, helpful, and safe, the human ranks it highly, a mathematical reward.
And if it doesn't?
If the AI provides an answer that is rude, controversial, or touches on a prohibited topic like giving medical advice or discussing sensitive politics, the human ranks it poorly, a mathematical penalty.
It's literally digital dog training. Sit, stay, don't bite the enterprise client. Good boy, here is a positive reinforcement weight update.
That is precisely what it is. And over millions of these interactions, the neural network mathematically rewires itself. The penalty signals propagate backward through those billions of parameters, altering the vector spaces we talked about earlier.
So it changes the map.
Yes. The AI learns to mathematically avoid the conceptual areas that get penalized. It builds an invisible, heavily fortified fence around sensitive topics.
And this is where the major players differ.
Drastically. Most major AI companies apply heavy, aggressive RLHF. Their primary goal is brand safety.
They don't want to end up on the front page of the news for the wrong reason.
Exactly. They want to ensure their models never, ever generate a bad PR headline. They mathematically traumatize the model into being intensely apologetic and overly cautious. If you ask a heavily RLHF'd model a slightly edgy question, its parameters immediately route the logic into a pre-written, sanitized refusal script.
I'm sorry, as an AI language model, I cannot fulfill this request.
We have all seen that exact phrase.
Too many times.
Grok intentionally uses far less RLHF. They applied enough behavioral conditioning to make it functional, conversational, and capable of following instructions, but they deliberately stopped the training process before they ironed out its personality and its edge.
So the missing muzzle.
Right. Less RLHF means the internal vector pathways to controversial or blunt topics are not blocked off. It means when you ask it a difficult, sensitive question, it doesn't immediately default to a corporate apology. It assesses the data and gives you the raw, unfiltered output.
Okay, let's pause and synthesize this, because this is a massive foundational setup for you, the listener. We are dealing with an engine that has hundreds of billions of parameters. It is feeding natively on the real-time, chaotic fire hose of global human reaction. And it has deliberately skipped the final stages of corporate obedience school, leaving its safety filters intentionally porous in the pursuit of maximum truth.
It's a very potent combination.
Right. Knowing all of that, treating this thing like a standard Google search bar seems not just ineffective, but wildly irresponsible. How do you actually steer a machine like this without it wildly hallucinating or going off the rails?
If you treat a supercomputer designed to map the universe like a simple keyword retrieval system, you are going to get terrible results. You have to learn how to drive it. You have to understand the cognitive mechanics of advanced prompting.
Which is exactly where we're going next. The operational side of our deep dive. The core message is clear. Interacting with Grok requires a shift in how you fundamentally approach computation. You aren't searching. You are guiding a reasoning engine.
It's a completely different skill set.
And we have 4 highly specific, advanced prompting techniques to explore from the source material. Let's start with the first one, role prompting.
A classic.
The classic example is commanding the AI. Act as a senior SpaceX engineer with 15 years of experience. Now, on the surface, this feels a bit silly. It's software. It doesn't have a job at
It
SpaceX.
doesn't wear a hard hat.
Right. Why does telling a computer to play pretend actually change the quality of the math or the physics it outputs?
It feels like a